This show contains movie spoilers and swearing. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Bitesize Cinema. I'm your host RJ McCready, and for this episode I'm going to take you guys back to 1984 to look at Arnold Schwarzenegger's sword and sorcery sequel to Conan, which is Conan The Destroyer. So let's go back to that world, let's get on the horses, let's play you guys a trailer, and I'll see you soon.
In an age when only the strongest survived, and only the ruthless triumphed, only one name became a legend. Conan the Destroyer. In his first adventure, he fought alone.
It is written that a woman child must make a perilous journey. I want you to take her on that journey.
Now, he joins a wizard.
What are they going to do?
Have lunch.
A warrior.
There are 6 of them against her.
1, 2, 3.
A renegade.
I think you're right.
And a princess. Together, they are sent by a treacherous queen across the lands of hostile kingdoms to solve the mystery of an ancient race and seek the power of a phantom city.
You're afraid of magic.
When it comes from evil,
This will.
come anyway.
The Horn of Dagoth, destroyer of worlds.
The god will live again. Enough talk.
If they cannot seize the horn in time, the world will be plunged into eternal darkness. Grace Jones, Wilt Chamberlain, Mako, Sarah Douglas, and Arnold Schwarzenegger as Conan the Destroyer. The all-new adventures of the most powerful legend of them all.
And welcome back, guys. So let's read the synopsis out, which is a pretty short one. It's Conan leads a ragtag group of adventurers on a quest for a princess. That's it. That's the movie. It's a Universal Studio production. It's a fantasy adventure movie. It's got a 5.9 on IMDb. I think it could probably get a little bit more than that. It was a 15 in the UK, PG in America when it came out. And it was directed by Richard Fleischer. I think that's how you pronounce his name. He's familiar with the old adventure movies. He's done 1 or 2 adventure movies in the past. He did 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which is a classic. The Vikings, The Fantastic Voyage, Amityville 3D, Soylent Green, Red Sonja, which is kind of like some people say it's the 3rd instalment to Conan. I'll get into that later on. It's got a hell of a soundtrack to it. Soundtrack which I absolutely love is Basil Plodorus. And he did the soundtracks to RoboCop, Starship Troopers, Iron Eagle. And he did the original Conan movie as well. It's a great soundtrack to this movie. It goes along really well. Had a $18 million budget, which is quite a lot for 1984, and this film did really well at the box office. It did a little bit better than the first movie. It did $31 million at the box office, so it did okay, but unfortunately it didn't do too well critically. A lot of people don't really like this film. I don't know why. I like it. I think it's a good movie. I think it's very comic book style. And what you got to remember is that the directors and the producers at the time thought that let's have a look at what else is being made. You had films like Kroll that just came out, The Never-Ending Story, Lady Hawk, Legend, and they thought that let's try and do a film that's a little bit more sort of family orientated, and that's where you kind of get the difference between this and the first Conan movie, which is quite evident. But you know, it's as I said, I like this film. Typical of me, if you listen to my other shows, and Dan Bone, little shout out to him, who will understand this because I say this all the time, my regular co-host, is I caught this 11 o'clock at night. I think it was on Channel 4, and you know, it was a fun ride for 90 minutes. And I just think it's one of those films that kind of gets you from A to B. I like a lot of the characters in it. It's got a basic plot. It's a little bit like Dungeons and Dragons, where you know you've got to sort of do this and you've got to do that, and you've got to get a gem, and then you've got to fight some bad guys, and then you've got to go and get a horn, and then you get double crossed and stuff like that. So you know, it does exactly what it says on the tin. And let's have a look at the cast. Obviously, you've got Arnold Schwarzenegger in this film. He's the sort of peak here. He's doing really well. He was doing Terminator at the time, so I think he was going between sets here. He was committed to this, but he also had Terminator on another set that he was doing. And there's a little bit of trivia here as well, because Arnie was committed to this, James Cameron had to put Terminator on hold, and whilst he was waiting for Arnie to come back, he wrote Aliens. So in some ways, if you didn't have Conan the Destroyer, you probably wouldn't have had Aliens. It's funny how you have these like little ties. Grace Jones is in this film. You know, it's mid-80s. Grace Jones is in this film, and she's having a great time. You know, she's with fashion, music. She was in a James Bond movie called View to a Kill. Wilt Chamberlain, basketball player, 7'1", giant, absolute giant. He played for the LA Lakers. I think this might have been one of his debut movies. Mako makes a return as the Wizard in this movie. He's one of the only other actors, obviously apart from Arnie, to return. And then you've got Sarah Douglas as Queen Taramas, and a lot of you would probably recognise her from the villain from Superman 2, and she was also in a film with Doug McClure called The People That Time Forgot. Olivia d'Abo as Princess Jenna. I think she was in her early teens in this movie, about 16 years old, something like that. And Pat Roach. Now, he's a guy that turns up an awful lot in films. Notable for playing a bad guy in Indiana Jones Raiders of the Lost Ark. He's a mechanic dude who has a punch-up with Indy. He's in Willow. I think he might have been in the original Conan movie. He's just in a lot of films, and he does great. So Pat Roach in this, he plays the Wizard, and I think he might turn up as one of the other characters in the end of the movie as well. He's usually known for playing one or two characters in movies. And I forgot about this as well. Andre the Giant is in this film, and I didn't know that. And he plays Dagoth, who is the horned creature you see at the end of this movie. So yeah, it's a really good cast. You know, lots of 80s icons in this film. Let's talk a little bit about Conan himself. So he is originally a comic book character from the 1930s. There was some short stories from that time. He was created by Robert E. Howard. So you've got books, you've got comics, and Robert E. Howard also produced the spin-off to this, which is Red Sonja, which is a film that Schwarzenegger stars in, and he's originally going to return as Conan, but due to some rights they couldn't do that, so they brought him back as Calidor. And I've mentioned this before on the Red Sonja episode, which I've done before, in the past. One of my previous episodes. So Calidor is like a nickname for Conan, and I think that's how they tied it in. So effectively, I've always seen Red Sonja as the third instalment. And I might as well mention that now. So this was supposed to be a trilogy. But Schwarzenegger, he wanted this film to be a little bit more like the original one, a little bit more sort of darker, a little bit more gritty. And as I said just a minute ago, this film is a little bit more sort of comic book. And Arnold Schwarzenegger was a little bit unhappy with also Dino De Laurentiis. So they weren't happy with the way the film was going. That's the reason why Arnold Schwarzenegger kind of washed his hands with it. But then he did go on to do Red Sonja. So, as I said, I kind of see Red Sonja as the third instalment. It does sort of tie in quite nicely. And if you haven't seen Red Sonja, go check it out. You know, it's got the similar sort of how can I explain? Similar sort of thing, similar sort of model. You know, it's a bit like Dungeons and Dragons. You've got a quest. You know, you've got to go and do something, and you pick characters up along the way to help you out. You've got a bad guy. You've got an ultimate fight at the end. So, and I'll be honest with you guys, I'm all right with that. I'm not a big fan of films with like long running times, and I do like a basic plot. So that's why I do enjoy this movie. A little bit of trivia. So this is quite funny. Wilt Chamberlain, they struggled to find a horse for him because he was so tall. When he sat on the horse, his feet were like dragging along the floor, so they had trouble with that. And as I mentioned earlier, the reason why this film's a little bit more sort of comic book is because of the success of E.T. at the time. They just thought that these other films that are coming out a little bit sort of family orientated. That's the reason why they toned this one down a little bit. And E.T.'s got something to do with that. E.T.'s also got something to do with The Thing as well, so no, I won't get into that. But Grace Jones. This is funny. She put 2 stuntmen into hospital. That surprised me. That's on the trivia, which I've found. Wilt Chamberlain and Grace Jones did 90% of their own stunts for this movie. And Arnie... I've already mentioned this. Arnie returned for Red Sonja, which I've already mentioned. And what else have I got on here for the trivia? I think that's about it. Yeah, Arnie's commitment to Terminator, which I've already mentioned. The story was written by Roy Thomas, and he had previously done a film called Fire and Ice, which is a Bashki animated movie. And I've only just checked that out a few years ago. I was saying a few years ago. I think I checked it out last year. That's a good film. So when you look at that and when you look at this, you can sort of see the sort of comparisons. There was supposed to be a fight with a giant spider with Conan. That would have been pretty cool, but that was cut out due to budget, and they also thought that was going to clash too much with the spider from Krull, which came out the year before this. There was also supposed to be a fight with a giant demon with Conan as well. There's some pretty good stuff here, which I think would have made this film even better. But again, they couldn't get the budget to scale it down. It was filmed a lot in Mexico. They used a lot of miniatures. And I was going to say this, I think the old special effects hold up pretty good in this film. There's a few bits in it where you kind of go, yeah, that looks a bit dodgy. I think it's a bit when they're on the lake going to the castle, which I'll mention later on. But some of the miniature sets with the actors, I think they did a special... They tied in the actors with the miniatures, and I think that holds up quite well. Arnie wanted the film to be a little bit more violent, so I think he was happy to sort of try and push it up to more that 15. But having said that, there is still quite a lot of, head chops and throats being slashed, and some violence in this movie. So it's got a fair amount in it. And the last bit here, I've just put here. Arnie apparently put on an extra £10 for this movie, but he's looking pretty bulked up and ripped, as always, for this time. So that is the building block for this movie, as I always say. So there you go. So let's do a bite-sized review of this movie. So basically it starts off with a really good score by the composers I've mentioned. You've got a very similar tone to the original movie here, where it's kind of like there's like a hint of like red going across the screen. You've got some riders coming in that look very menacing. They've got skulls on their heads. And this is where you've got the Wilt Chamberlain character coming in. And then you've got Conan, who's praying to his god Crom. And he is praying to Valeria, who is his love from the original movie. So it's all very sort of spiritual and stuff like that. And then you're introduced to Conan's... He's kind of like a Joker character here. It's Malik. And he is played by Tracy Walter. And he's cool. I like him in this. I like it where you get a little bit of comic relief like that. And I forgot to mention he's also in Batman as well. I think he's plays the Joker's right hand man. So he's it's common for him to sort of play the sort of sidekick to characters. So you've got the Queen that turns up, who is the Sarah Douglas character, and she releases some of her henchmen onto Conan. Conan beats them all up, gets some sword fighting here, and this is basically a test to see how good Conan is. And she offers him a quest to go and take the Princess Valeria to a castle to go and retrieve a gem, so then it will resurrect the dreaming god Dagoth. Doesn't sound too much of a good deal at this time, really. But then what she says to him is that if he does this quest, then this will help bring back Valeria. So this is the deal for the quest. But there's like a little bit of a double cross here, because he goes back to her castle, he meets the princess, and she basically tells Wilt Chamberlain Bombata, who goes with Conan on this quest, that once he's retrieved this gem and got everything, then to kill him. So there's a bit of a double cross here. So the gem is secured in the fortress by a wizard, and then this is where you find out that Conan does not like magic, he doesn't like wizards, he's afraid of them. I suppose it's because it's like, he knows that his sword can be overpowered by them, and it's something that he can't deal with. So then he goes and seeks his friend Akira. So this is kind of like the first part of the quest, like you're getting everybody together. But Akira has been captured by a tribe of cannibals, so it's kind of like where you get one of your first fight scenes here. He manages to rescue Akira, and then they continue with their adventure, and this is where they meet Zula, which is Grace Jones. And she's a powerful warrior herself. She's got a quarterstaff. She's very angry most of the time. And it's actually Jenna, the princess, who asked Conan to release her and join her on the quest. So with that, he does. And Zula is kind of like the next sort of sidekick. And look, I've got to be honest with you, I like Grace Jones in this movie. I think she's good. I think everything about her at the time in the 80s, with her modelling and her singing and everything like that, she sort of brings her own. And that's what I like about her character, it's great. So it's good to see Schwarzenegger and her working together. So our heroes, they get to the castle of Tophamon, where the gem is located, and they sleep outside the castle, and they're going to go there in first light. But during the night, the wizard turns into a bird or an eagle or something like that. And again, it's not a bad special effect that holds up. And he goes to the camp and he kidnaps the princess, takes her back to the castle. So in the morning, Conan and our heroes go into the castle. Conan finds the gem room, and this is kind of like a sort of reminds me of like Enter the Dragon, because this gem room turns into mirrors. And Conan's got his sword and he's fighting the wizard. It's funny, I've got to quote Ricky Morgan here, because I remember him talking about this movie, and he said, what they do in the 80s, that's right, we'll just stick on a toxic Avenger mask and a cape, and you got a bad guy, and that's pretty much what you got in this film. It's I forgive this, because like I say, I love the 80s, I love these practical special effects, I can't knock it. I know the face doesn't move that much with the wizard, but hell, there you go. You've got this scene with Conan, he's trying to fight the wizard, and this is what he's afraid of, and that's what I'm saying. It's because it's magic, he can't understand it, so he's got to be a little bit clever here. Conan's getting, he's getting cut up. Then he smashes into one of the mirrors, and then this is where the wizard gets cut up, so he realises that it's almost like the wizard's soul is in the castle, so he smashes all the mirrors, and then he ultimately kills the wizard. And as a result of this is another 80s thing as well. You get like a crumbling castle. It's a bit like what happens in Krull. The heroes have got to try and get out. There's boulders falling down, and then the castle falls into the lake and disappears. So they've got the gem, and as I said, this is like, a bit like Dungeons and Dragons. You've got the gem, now you've got to go to the temple, and then you've got to go and get the horn. And that's exactly what they do. But when they get to the temple, Kiro, the wizard, he looks at the hieroglyphs, and he realises now, he's worked out that this is a part of a double cross, because to enable this resurrection, the princess has to be sacrificed, so she's going to get killed. But this is the least of their problems right now, because they are attacked by priests to protect the temple, because it's never going to be that easy. During this attack, a secret exit opens, and this is where you get a double cross, because Mombata then takes the princess through this exit with the horn, and he leaves Conan and our fellow heroes with the priest. Conan with his allies, they manage to escape the priest's temple, and then they have to now go and rescue the princess. And this is where Malik, when they get to the Queen's castle, he shows them a secret route into the throne room. Whilst our heroes are getting to the throne room, the ceremony is taking place with the Queen and the Princess as a sacrifice. The horn gets placed onto the statue. That starts to come alive, and then it turns into the you get like a sort of rubber latex Dagoth monster now. And then you get Conan, he takes on Bombata. Conan kills Bombata, so they kind of have like a final fight. And then you get Zula. She protects Princess Jenna by killing this wizard type guy who's doing the sacrifice. And I think what's happened is, because the princess doesn't get sacrificed, this is where you get the ultimate, where the statue turns into a monster. So that's basically the thing that happens if you don't continue this sacrifice. So then now, like I say, you've got this fight between Conan and the Dagoth. And you get a pretty brutal scene here. I mean, like I say, where they said this was a PG movie, you now got Conan trying to rip off this horn. It's quite a sort of disgusting sort of practical special effects scene. And then just before this, I mentioned it, obviously the Queen gets killed by Dagoth, so she's kind of created her own fate, basically, like most of these bad guys in these movies. And then, because Conan's ripped off the horn, he's then weakened this monster, and then he can kill him, or the monster, with a sword. And ultimately, that's it. It's basically quest done, save the day. Princess is she stayed alive. She hasn't been sacrificed. And then it cuts into the final scene here, where now the princess has taken over as like the queen of the castle or the city. And then she honours Zula as a protector of the city. And then Malik is basically, she says, "Oh, I need a fool," so he's kind of like the Joker. And then Mako gets hired as a wizard, so all our allies have been rewarded. And then it comes to Conan, where she offers him marriage and a place on the throne to go and rule this kingdom. But then Conan declines, and he says that my objective is to have my own kingdom, and he declines. And then this is where it goes on. I imagine this is where it potentially was supposed to go on to another sequel, which never happened. But then you do see Conan on a throne at the end, and he's looking a bit bored of himself, actually. So he's got what he's wanted, but it ends with Mako talking over this bit here, and it says that but that's another story. It's another story of high adventure, and then that's the end of the movie. So there you go, guys. That is Conan the Destroyer in a bite size. And as I said at the beginning of this show, you know, it's not a bad film. It's a fun movie, gets you from A to B. There's some action in it, does what it says on the tin. It's a lot different to the first movie. The first one is it's a very gritty movie. I can see why people sort of compare, you know, do this comparison between the two. But, you know, this is comic book, and I'll just say this, I need Conan the Destroyer more than I ever have needed it, because, you know, with the state of the world at the moment, you know, we need some fun escapism, and this is what this film is, you know what I mean? To have Grace Jones and Wilt Chamberlain and Arnold Schwarzenegger and Tracy Walker with Sarah Douglas in a movie, do you know what I mean? You're just thinking, oh, yeah, this is a fun time. So, you know, it's quirky, practical special effects and rubbery monsters and sword fighting and all that sort of stuff. Do you know what I mean? It's just, you know, don't go into it thinking you're going to get a masterpiece, but, you know, is it a fun time? 100% it is. So yeah, I'll always back this film up. And the other thing is, got to give a shout out to Dan Nichols, who's one of my listeners, and he does a lot on the Facebook page and that, and he's the reason why I'm doing this show today, Dan, because you posted it on the page this morning, and that's why I've just jumped on this. I thought, keep saying it, I keep saying I was going to do Conan, and here we go. So thanks for that, thanks for posting that, because that's why I put this together today. So this is just it really is an ad hoc episode, guys. I didn't even watch the movie, I've just sort of kind of just put it all together. So I hope you enjoyed that. Hopefully that's given you some facts as well about this film, how they put it together. So there you go. So let me tell you about what I'm coming back with next. So Dan and I will be, well, another shout out to Dan Bone, because he's just had an operation and thankfully he's recovered. So hope you're doing well there, Dan. Little shout out to you there, mate. But hopefully soon, once Dan's recovered, we're going to be doing Return of the Jedi. So be looking forward to that. And I've also got my good friend and listener, Kung Fu Dave, who will be returning. He's doing a lot of stuff right now. We're going to be looking at Armageddon, you know. It's a crazy movie. I know it's a crazy movie, but like I said, we need these types of films today. Do you know what I mean? Bit of escapism. I'm all for it. I'm always going to back it up. So that will be a fun movie to talk about. So that'll be coming up soon. And as a little bit of admin for the show, I am a proud member of the Legion Podcast Network. So please go and check out all the other shows on there. Also go and check out my other show, which I'm having a lot of fun with at the moment, which is the Mystery Vault podcast, where I talk about the unexplained and kind of give you my sort of, you know, thoughts on all that sort of stuff, which has been a lot of fun. So yeah, that's on the Legion as well. And you can find that show and this show on iTunes, Spotify, and several other players on the internet. If you put in Bitesize Cinema Podcast, it will take you to somewhere where you can listen to it. I've also got a Facebook page, so that's where I'm most active. So you put any comments on there or anything you want me to have a look at, post it on there. I'll see what I can do. So there you go, guys. Hope you enjoyed that episode, and as always, keep it bite-size, keep it.
If you enjoyed this show, then make sure you check out the other great shows on the Legion Podcast Network, like Cinema Psyops, Cinema Beef, Devour the Podcast, Duncan and Bo Come Correct, Exploding Heads Horror Movie Podcast, Friday the 13th, Get Slayed, The Hellming Power Hour, Hello, This is the Doom Show, Hero Hero Go Show, Kill the Cast, Underwater Kaiju from Outer Space, Jerry Hates Action, Legion After Dark, Mental Health, Obsessive Cinema, Discourse, Pick 6 Movies, the podcast by The Cemetery, the podcast on Haunted Hill, the Psychosemantic Podcast, Rick Radio, House of Wax, Dude Looks Like the 80s, Rabbit and Red Radio, the Shadecast, Short Bus Cinema, 2 Drink Minimum Commentaries, the VD Clinic, Who Will Survive Horror Podcast, and Witch vs. the Doomsday Clock. With such a wide spread of shows, there is guaranteed to be a niche for you to fall in love with. Horror, politics, movies, books, sex, music, commentaries, health, video games, kaiju, action, news, comedy, and opinions that would most likely get you killed in some parts of the world. We are proud to bring you some of the best podcasting in the world. Check us out at www.legionpodcast.com. iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube, and any other dark corner of the internet where podcasts can be found.